Okay, today we're going to do a complete overview of the throttle mechanism on the karts. Okay, so let's start with the gas pedal. Gas pedal is very simple. It just goes up and down like that. These two bolts down here, these 8mm, well, I guess you use a 13mm wrench on them, but anyways, those are M8 bolts. Those are what stop the throttle pedal from going down in race kart mode. When you flip this over, this is what stops the pedal in sprint kart mode. So those two are completely separate for adjustments, okay? So if you have a kart that doesn't have if in race kart mode it does not have enough top speed, like it peters out too early, it's these two that need to be adjusted. If you have a kart that's too fast or too slow in sprint kart mode, it's this one that needs to be adjusted, and it just adjusts how far the pedal goes down. Okay, so from there we have a rod. See, this rod goes here and it goes through a little tube in here. It goes underneath there, comes all the way back to here. And I will push on the throttle, on the pedal now, and you can see how that moves, okay? Now, sometimes these joints here, they break, all right? So you need to replace it. Now this kart, in this particular case, this piece was replaced, and whoever replaced it, when they put the new one in, they bolted into this hole instead of where it was in this hole. So guess what? That threw it out of adjustment. So when you're doing it, you got to make sure that you put it back exactly the way it was. And when you're replacing this piece, you have to look at how many threads are sticking here. And when you put the new one on, you've got to make sure that it's the same. Okay. So now that you have that on there, then, well, let's spin off this air cleaner cover so we can see this better. You can see there's a different kind of joint here at the front. Now, eventually I want all the karts to use this kind of joint, but right now this one has two different styles. So if you have to replace it with the same style, because believe it or not, this one, the length of it is slightly different than that one. So if you replace that one with a joint like this, the throttle mechanism would be out of adjustment. It would not work properly. Okay, so now we're at that point in the adjustment. Now you have this arm. These arms, I get these laser cut, these arms, and this little nut here can become loose. So you gotta make sure that that is not, it's gotta be tight enough that it doesn't have a whole lot of slop, but loose enough that it still moves. If you tighten that up too much, this will just lock in a position like that and it won't spring back. Okay. From that arm, you have these governor springs right here. These karts, some have 2 of these springs, some have 3. They look like this. Okay, so those springs are what, there's a little governor inside the motor that limits the amount of RPM that a kart will rev to. These springs counteract that. Now, the factory has 1 spring on here, and the karts will only rev to 3,200 RPM. Well, we double those springs and sometimes triple those springs so that we can get more RPMs out of the karts and more performance. So if one of these snaps, and occasionally one will snap or one will fall off or whatever, if you have a kart that does not go fast enough in race kart mode or sprint kart mode, that's your first place you want to look, is like, oh, are those things in place? Like, are those, does it have 2 springs there? Or if it has had a 3rd one and the 3rd one broke, you'll see it lying down in this area here because it's broken off and fallen down. You need to replace that. And when you do that, you gotta check the RPMs. You gotta make sure that the kart revs to proper RPMs. You do that with this RPM gauge. Okay, so this is called an inductive RPM gauge or tack. And you just clip it onto the kart, see? And there's more than one of these around. Not all of them are on the clip. Usually they're just by themselves like this. But there's a wire that just sits in the back of it. You can't really see it, but the wire comes out of here and it wraps around. You see how it wraps around the spark plug wire, and it senses the signal for the spark going through there, and that's how it determines RPM. So when you start the kart up, it'll show RPMs here. In race kart mode, the kart should rev to no more than 5,250 RPM, and in sprint kart mode, no more than 3,150 RPM. So you got to adjust that. All right. Now, from that point, since we're talking about throttle mechanisms, this adjustment here is for the power that the kart makes. So this is how we make a kart more powerful or less powerful and adjust for lap time. So if you have a kart that is too fast, you would loosen this nut off and you would turn this bolt one full rotation, and that would slow the cart down by around 0.3 of a second per lap, okay? If you have a cart that's too slow and it's not a handling issue, sometimes a cart's too slow because it's got a tire pressure has gone down or something like that. If it just seems like it's a power issue, then you would turn this bolt out or that way, and it would increase the power of the cart and speed it up. Okay, so from now, a new addition to the cart is this anti-throttle mechanism that I've installed, okay? So this, you see this cable here, it goes down to this arm. You can't really see it in there, but it goes down to the governor arm and it goes around and goes down to the brake pedal, okay? So when you push on the brake pedal, all right, you can see that cable, it stiffens up. Now what happens is that if a customer pushes the gas pedal and the brake pedal at the same time, this cable pulls on the throttle and it pulls it back to idle, so that a customer cannot push gas and brake at the same time, because that destroys transmissions and brakes. So it's a safety issue. And now here's the little thing that you need to remember about this anti-throttle system. The way it's adjusted, when the brake pedal is all the way down, you'll see that cable goes tight. Well, what happens if you go to bleed the brakes on this cart, you're going to go to bleed the brakes on it and you're going to push that pedal down farther than it has been pushed down before. You're going to stretch this cable out or break it even. So when you're bleeding the brakes, you need to be careful of that, okay? So don't push the brake pedal down too far when you are bleeding the brakes, because it will damage this anti-throttle system that we have in the carts. Now you notice that there's a little bit of slack in here. That's because we don't want it to, like right now the cart's not running, so that cable is slack. When it's running, this cable tends to go a little tighter. But anyway, okay, so that's how that works. Now, the other important thing to remember, and the reason that I'm making this video actually is because last week I came in and there was 3 carts missing their throttle return spring, okay? And today I came in on a Sunday morning to fix a cart because it apparently had a throttle problem, and all it was this spring was missing. If you're walking around the track and you notice there's a spring like this out on the track, you need to find where that spring came from. Chances are there is a cart running around with no throttle return spring. Now, without that throttle return spring, somebody's going to step on the throttle, it's going to go like this, and it's not going to go back all the way. And if it doesn't go back all the way, it's just going to want to take off all the time. All right, so that is a complete overview of the throttle mechanism. It all needs to be adjusted correctly to have the proper RPMs for everything to work right. And now that you know how everything functions, you should be able to figure out how to adjust it properly. Okay, well, that's it. Thanks.